Well, good morning, and thank you for joining another episode of Winning with Wow, radio broadcast of the Women's Business Center of Richmond. I am your host, Dr. Danny, and we have another outstanding woman, a boss lady who's doing her best to make an impact, leave a legacy, and build wealth. Good morning, Michelle Harris is with us. Michelle, tell us a little bit. Um, about your entrepreneurial journey. On this show, we really try to highlight women who have been in business. You learned some things, you've experienced some things, you've had some trials, you challenges, you've overcome them, you've remained resilient in doing that. And our listeners and our viewers are wanting to know a little bit about your business, but more about your journey. So talk to us about your business and then tell us about something that is not often known about you. If they only have 5 minutes to hear this show, what would you want them to walk away with?
All righty. First of all, good morning to Winning with Wow audience, and thank you for the invitation. I would say my entrepreneurial journey really started. My dad was an entrepreneur. His primary income was through many businesses that he had. So my sisters and I were no strangers to odd weekends and just having the stamina and the tenacity to do what you have to do to keep a business afloat. So in 2004, 2005, I became a published book author through a publisher by the name of Publish America, and naturally opened up my own company to receive the royalties and to receive fees based on speaker engagements.
Awesome.
I did know that I wanted the funding to be separate. And back then, this is 2006. So we can celebrate 17 years in business.
Congratulations. And I'll just pause there because that's what this segment is about. We have 3 different segments that we do. One is called Bossing Up, where we talk to people who have at least 5 years in their area because you've got some runway right now. You can speak to some things. We also have a segment called Fire Creatives, and those are the people. And I think I talked to you about this.
Right.
And so you said you kind of walk along both sides of those roads. And then we have Cash Connectives. And so today I look at your tenure in this area, and I know that you have a lot of wisdom and nuggets to drop. 17 years. Congratulations.
Yes. So thank you. And so through that 17 years, the first couple of years, again, it was just knowing I wanted to have a separate place to have the funds go and manage. And then visionary knew that at some point I'd wanted to go into self-publishing. And so really it wasn't till 2011, 2013 when I started to design and develop my first book that would be part of the self-publishing. And that's when I really went into the true seed kind of stage with planning and looking at expense and profit, bringing a product to life. So really kind of from a manufacturing standpoint. And so that journey is very different than just being a journey where you're receiving revenues based on third parties work, so to speak. You're doing a lot of that on the ground running, using a lot of different resources and a lot of different companies. And ran into, a lot more challenges because you're looking at how much expense you're going to put out, how much profit you're going to make ahead of time. So using a lot more P&L statements and analysis.
Well, wait a minute now. I have to do like Mike. You can't just throw around now. We might know those letters. We want to make sure that everyone listens, understands a P&L statement. What is the P and the L?
So it's a profit and loss statement. And if it's one thing that I would have to leave to everyone, it's take the time to really look at how much money you're going to spend. Having a new business or an idea or a passion is great. You want to buy and get everything set up, but you really should be looking at everything you're spending money on, even if you're driving somewhere to go pick up supplies. For creatives, you go into an art store or you go into a frame store, you want to look at your mileage. If you are traveling out to a vendor area, look how far you're driving. You say, oh, great, I made, $1,000 at the event. Well, how much did it cost you to get out there? And so you look at everything. And so that's the balance of how much you spend to how much you're actually going to gross, and then the difference between the two.
Yeah, I mean, me coming from an engineering background, I see that as I was very early educated about total cost of ownership, total cost to serve, and you're describing it in the language that business owners have to understand. You can't just look at the balance of the funds that are coming in. You need to look at what it costs to procure that contract, what it costs to deliver on it, if it's a product, if it's a service, etc. And so that is, I think that's essential for developing resilience and understanding that, is more to the story. I was talking with someone yesterday about growing top line revenue, the need to do that. And the question came in there as to whether or not you could, grow without growing top line revenue. And absolutely you can. So you were describing something because it involves your funds coming in and your expenses. Talk to me about increasing margin, right? So you got to bring those expenses down, even if the top line doesn't change, because you mentioned a number of those things. When you moved from using a third-party organization to self-publishing, can you talk about the different areas of ownership that you had to either learn about, because your father was in business, so we have legacy here, passing down that entrepreneurial spirit, but there are some things that I'm assuming you had to learn about to fully go into self-publishing?
Yes, to go into self-publishing. And I'm going to talk about real quick the top line, growing the top margin, and also top line revenue, just from the standpoint of being passionate about what you do. One of the other things I would suggest is for people to have other measurements of success besides just the profit. Because we know that businesses, on average, this is centuries after centuries, statistics and studies show that businesses oftentimes take 5 or 10 years to create a profit. And so you can get discouraged if you don't have other measurements of success. So have those along the way. That way you can keep your momentum going. You have other benchmarks so that you can measure your success besides just the profit piece. So the things that I had to learn in terms of self-publishing was distribution. That's one of the things, logistics, distribution, how you're going to get your books out there. When I was published, books were everywhere, Barnes and Nobles, Walden Books, Borden's. Self-publishing wasn't as common back then. And books weren't as readily available, like on Amazon or something. I didn't have to think about any of that. If there was an order, it went through them. But when I went to do the self-publishing, I knew that I had to explore that before I went into it. So I had to look at Ingram Distributed. I had to look at all the distributing options. I had to decide whether or not I wanted to into certain contracts. For example, Barnes and Nobles. It was great when my books were out there through the publisher, but and it's a great company, don't get me wrong, but they do have the ability to just slash the price on a product. Well, if I'm paying at cost for the book myself. I don't know that I want you slashing my price at a whim. I love going there and buying books for $2. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know that I would, as a business owner, I don't know if I paid a price point of $4 to now sell that at $2, because now I've lost money. So, those are the kind of things that, I had to look at and explore. So logistics, distribution, marketing. I have a background in marketing anyway, through my past career, and where I went out and did marketing. So that's just something was natural, but taking that and applying it to what I do.
And then so when you do that, you talk about distribution, that's so valuable. I don't know that we've had an opportunity to talk very candidly about the supply chain and your channel to market and the agreements that you get into, as opposed to, are they doing it on consignment, meaning you're carrying the entire financial burden of the books, that their inventory until they sell it, then you can reconcile. Or do they become a client or a customer like Amazon? Amazon wants to buy a lot. If it's something that's popular and they get it at a significantly reduced price, the benefit to the seller is that you get your money right then. It's not on consignment. But order fulfillment is also something you're talking about. So within that channel, are they drop shipping your product, your book? Are you having to get that out when somebody make an order. All of those things come
Right.
into play when you think about it's not just, okay, well, I turn off this area of control where I made this much per book and they handled everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Now you get into knowing all of that. We have a couple of folks who are in the music space in our family,
Right.
and they do the same thing. Talk to me about how e-commerce may have improved or helped you on the supply chain distribution side of the house, or did it?
Yeah, it's well, it has in terms of availability for customers at any given time. So you can, like an Etsy shop, for example. Now I'm a book author, but I'm also an artist, and I do arts in bookmarks. So I have
well, you got to shout out how people can get connected to your Etsy line.
Yes, Love Hits the Mark, and it was just opened up recently. And so there are select prices on there.
Love hits the mark. We want to make sure they get that part. Okay.
And so it's all one word together. And so, but the e-commerce has been great for that because you don't have to be everywhere. I do believe in diversifying portfolios. So having stationary locations where the products are available. I love getting out, meeting people. I do. You know, the vending space to me, just the people I meet with their own businesses, their boutique shops, the artists is so absolutely amazing. So you just
recently did a pop-up, didn't you?
I did. The pop-up RVA, but I've been out there, you know, vendoring for some time, and you just, the people out there are amazing. You know, they just have been out there for years doing their thing. Then, of course, the customers that you meet. So I like being out talking to people.
So where can people in Richmond get access to your books? Is there any physical environment where they can get your books and or your bookmarks, or is it all online? So
the bookmarks are available at Crossroads Art Center, which is located at the Crossroads Shopping Center.
Friends, that's right. All right. Big Mike had to speak up to that one.
Absolutely. So I do have a display in there, and that's a beautiful art gallery. If you haven't been there, you really should go. The books, the two that I have are on Amazon right now. There's no physical location where they are. Well, actually, except for the art gallery. I did have them down there at one point. Actually, I'm getting ready to work on my third book. And it's the first draft is due to the editor November 14th, or I'm sorry, November 19th. My editor is Bala Kern.
Well, we got a shout out to Bala Kern.
Bala Kern is she's the woman that I work with. Is the editor is Sam Cruitt. It's in London, in the UK, London, England. She's amazing. She's an amazing editor. And so, and then it's set for release April 15th, hopefully, at the African American Book Festival, which is on April 15th at the Richmond Diversity Center.
Oh, wow. That's a big deal. So wait a minute, though. I have to back up because I would be doing a disservice if we did not hear more about the first two projects. So talk to me about the impetus for the first product and then the second product. And is love the central theme through it all? Is it fiction, nonfiction? What are the titles? Talk to me about that.
Yes, thank you. So the first book is The Love Note. The second is East Grandel Sage. And the third is going to be Love When It's Rough. And so all of them are centered around, it's really a tween middle school age group. That's the target audience, 9 through 14. And it's just fun stories, but also with a message on how the principles of love through 1 Corinthians give you the strength to make really good decisions. And people think of love as romantic, physical, or just as something that's weak, but there's a lot of strength in being humble and respectful and honest. It just so happens after I wrote my first book, The Love Note, the city of Richmond, Beth Morelli, who headed up the YA coordinators group, asked me, she got a hold of the book and asked me to run a YA program for that summer. And I created a game called Love, Relationships, and You. Oh, wow. So I have that game, Love, Relationships, and You. The game is in the first two books now because they've been rewritten since 2004, 2005, when kids didn't have cell phones. So they were rewritten to be more current with the times. Gotcha. And those games now are now written in those books. And so, yes, the theme is around the principles of love.
Yeah, it seems like it would be beneficial to actually have an ongoing program affiliated with the schools to talk about healthy aspects of love, because I think some of that is missing But that is really admirable. I know when I was growing up, the books that I read about as it relates to love was I read Judy Blume books. Yeah. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Do you remember any of your childhood books? Yes. I mean, but I mean, that's awesome, especially since we want to definitely continue to include the exposure to African American authors, you know, and written from a perspective that all people can so they can see themselves in those books. So
right,
so
absolutely.
Hats off to you for that. So what was your motivation? I know you have a phenomenal daughter named Kendra. Was Kendra a consideration when you started the path to write to that particular target audience?
Yeah, but so that thank you for that question. It's a great question because I love this story. But so I write anyway. I had a poem that was selected as editor's choice for National Library of Poetry. I had 2 articles that were published in a newspaper magazine. And I had said I was going to write a book. I said, you know, I think I should write a book. Hadn't really thought of, I was kind of started. As a matter of fact, started a book called Through the Eyes of Honey. Still hadn't been finished yet.
Okay.
But and I'm driving to go pick up my daughter from middle school, and she gets in the car and she says, so and so wanted me to give this boy a note today. And I said, well, did you give it to him? She goes, no, she's boy crazy. And that's what she said.
All right, Kendra.
So in the book, this young lady, Gina, is in the school cafeteria, and her girlfriend, Felicia, asks her to deliver a note for her to this guy in the cafeteria. Now, you know, it wasn't in the cafeteria, I don't believe, that the girl wanted her to do it, but in the story, she does go and do it. So, but it did kick off from what she said getting in the car. And so in the story, she goes to deliver this note. Some girls see her do it. They believe he has a girlfriend, and drama ensues, and she's trying to get herself out of it. So that's the story, and that's kind of the little drama that goes behind it. And it's really taking responsibility for your own actions. Gina in the story goes back to Felicia, help me out, tell him it wasn't my note. She's like, oh, you know, he obviously didn't like me, didn't respond. You know, you're kind of on your own. She's on to another guy. And so that's the story.
I am intrigued. I want to see it on the big screen or on a stage somewhere. It sounds like it should be acted out.
I would love to see that. And so the other one, they're the same characters in the middle school. Love When It's Rough is Felicia, the girl from the first story who's boy crazy, who's really just a, you know, second character. But in the second book, you see that she changes. She gets into some fights. She's getting suspended. Turns out she's lost her mother. And she's got bipolar disorder, and her mother was managing her medicine. So now you're starting to see her personality, you know, that's coming out a lot more, and a lot more about what's going on with her because of her circumstance. In Love When It's Rough, she is out of the grieving process and back in school, and the pandemic has hit, obviously. And so it's
very timely and relevant.
Yeah.
So you touched on something. I'm not sure if you are familiar with an organization called Art of Me.
I'm not.
But I need to connect you. Shout out to Alicia Green, if you're out there. Alicia Green introduced me to her organization a few years ago, Art of Me. And it was a organization that was born out of dealing with her mental challenges, her mental health issues. But she was dealing with it as a teenager, but didn't get diagnosed till much later. And so every year she does a mental health rally. It's been in Henrico in the past years that I've been involved. But she's also getting involved in doing some behavioral programming within the city. And I would love for her, I'm sure your stuff is already known in the city, but I would love for you guys to meet and possibly collaborate on some things, because I think that the trauma that our young people are dealing with these days, especially around relationships, especially around emotions, are something that they're not thinking about. And so the fact that you deal with bipolar, you deal with emotional, all of those things, I think would be something positive to see within the city of Richmond and any of the other areas. So I will make that connection.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Really good. And so, you know, if we peel back the onion a little bit more, it sounds as though you're coming from a place of a calling and not just, let me just do this because it's fun. Let me just do this because
I can. It's there's something there where you are, it sounds like you have an impetus to be helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I've always wanted to help and work with youth. I tutored with children at risk for failing, not those that have an IEP. Henrico County Court appointed special advocate. So certainly,
so what does IEP?
That's an independent educational program.
Okay, usually for kids who are challenged.
Yeah, but those children already have a plan lined out for them, and so it's easier to move them through the system and get them the assistance that they need. But those children who don't quite meet the IEP, don't have the structure, and they're still at risk for failing, those are the children I would go in and work with. And then as a Henrico County Court appointed special advocate, certainly working with children who, show up at school every day and they're quiet. You don't know what's going on with their backgrounds, and they're victims of domestic violence. They've got very challenging situations going on, but you just don't know it.
Right.
And so just working with that young group, hands-on.
Right.
And none of these stories are their stories, by the way. It's just that knowing, like through the pandemic, for example, that there are children that were at home in those circumstances, where school sometimes can be a safe haven.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that, again, it's very powerful. It's unfortunate that the timeliness of what's going on. I mean, I think there was just another school shooting. I think the young man he was also killed by the police. And so we won't even know what his motive and motivation was. And then there was another one, I think the young man down in Raleigh, not too long, he might've been 12, I think. And he, and so the outpouring, this violence, after you get from being angry because of what tragedy has struck, you've got to say that these are not isolated incidents. Something is going on in our young people that we need to reach out to, and everybody has a little role to play. And I'm excited that you are doing your part to at least give voice to some of these things, and then maybe some of the young people reading your books can, see themselves in it and maybe reach out for that help. I want to shift gears a little bit. And, just tell me a little bit about your background. How did Michelle become Michelle?
Just great parents.
Okay.
I really did have great parents. Nice balance of just hard work. Went to Hampton University. I'm an alumni. Shout out HU.
Was it HU or HI? No,
it was actually HIU.
No worries.
Yeah.
I got you.
And then I always wanted to be an artist. So let me just start that. Growing up, I wanted to be an artist. My mother did say these are her words. We joke about this to this day. You're too smart to be sitting around doing that ... because I loved pointillism back then.
Okay.
So it was, I was going to go to college. And so I had a career, very successful career, as a large account manager, risk management. So commercial underwriting.
Yes.
And I still work now in a governmental agency.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yes, I did. So I retired from my first position. I still work with a governmental agency now.
Okay.
And so just the whole background, a very technical background, but still artsy, great parents, great family.
So you're in the visual art space. So you draw, paint?
All of it.
Okay.
I love to paint. I do oil paintings. I work with acrylics, pointillism. I work with ink. So I've done just all different types of art over the years.
So what I'm wanting to do, and go with me because I haven't fleshed this out. Well, before I say that, tell me, what is the network like, the ecosystem like for writers in the greater Richmond area, as far as you see it? Is it comprehensive? Is it splotchy? What is that network? How do you pour into each other? Are there opportunities? Are there writer, when they, writing sessions? Talk to me about that ecosystem.
Yeah, that's, I actually am not as involved in that ecosystem now. Through talking to other authors, I know that there are some that are very involved in it.
Okay.
So there's a very comprehensive one from what I understand. There's writers groups that work together. I know one young lady that runs competitions all the time through a small network that she goes through. Most of the networks that I've participated in is the Center for Literacy up in New York. I've done a lot of work up in New York, and I just think
it's the New York accent that I hear.
I was born in New York, and we left when I was 11, moved to Richmond, Virginia.
Okay.
But my mother's born and bred in Harlem, and I still a lot of the family that have the accent. So I guess it's still hanging out there somewhere.
Well, I will tell you though, Michelle, the idea that I had, and I thank you for sharing that with me, is we've had a couple of authors that have come through, but of which I am one. I have a couple of books that I've done, but I would like to have somewhere before the end of this year, just not a workshop, a writer's workshop, but a place for people to do readings. I'd like to get some people together who have done some things that are very moving, and however that happens. At the Women's Business Center of Richmond, we focus so much on helping people on their entrepreneurial journey, establishing their business, going through the ideation process, promoting and supporting their products to, capture their intellectual property. But we do networking events, of which there is one that's coming up. Our Women on Wealth Summit is taking place November 4th at the Living and Learning Center at Virginia Union University. You can find out about that at womenonwealth.org. But another piece of what I was thinking about was something that was even less formal than that. That's going to be a very unique environment, not like your typical conference where you go and you hear all these great people. But this idea is, we got great people in the audience. How do we capture the intellectual property, the intellectual capital in that room and put it to work? So that's the difference in that one. But this other piece is like, let's show up. Let's have a good time. Let's, burn some sage. Let's snap our fingers and do a reading. So look for that to be forthcoming.
I will.
If you're available, I'd love to include you in that. But just getting a couple of authors together, people who do poetry, not just from that perspective, but you got works that you've got out there. And I just think that would be an awesome thing. So I'm excited about that. So we've kind of come to the end of our time together, and it has been an awesome opportunity, one, to shine a light on you and your work. I think that's so important, that even in you're probably more well-known outside of Richmond than here, but we want to do what we can. But the other piece of it, we've talked about some good issues. Right. We've talked about some things that it relates to the content in your work and the passion in your heart and how you came to be. But I want people to know how they can get in contact with you, whether it's your socials, whether it's an email, how do your website, please share that.
Yes, so I have a couple of ways people can reach out to me. The first is my Instagram site is Ardnick_Real Love Compass. So anybody can reach out that way. I'm also on Twitter. And then on my my email, if you want to ask a question, Christine@ardnickpublishing.com. I do have a website, www.ardnickpublishing.com as well. I'm on Facebook. I don't use Facebook so much.
That's fine. Well, they have enough ways, but I just need to share with you guys, in case you didn't catch it, Ardnick is just Kendra spelled backwards.
Yes.
So ardnickpublishing.com.
Yes.
So again, thank you for just your grace. I feel like, we need to do a queenly wave as we walk away today with so much knowledge that we can use. Michelle Esparza Harris, author, community activist, advocate. I'm just loving it. Thank you. I have been your host, Dr. Danni, with the Women's Business Center of Richmond. This is our weekly broadcast found on ESPN Richmond 106.1 on Wednesday mornings at 5 a.m. Have a great day.